Okay, guess what time it is? You're right. It's time for another Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dai-shihan Miller here from Warrior Concepts. A bunch of people tell me that I probably shouldn't say that at the beginning because it wastes time, but you know what? It's what I do, right? Just to make sure that you know you're in the right place. Anyway, so this week's episode, we're going to be taking a look at this age-old argument, right? Strategy versus style. Now, before we dive into this, it's not that people who have specific martial styles or self-defense styles or fight styles don't use strategy. So it's not about strategy versus style. What I really want to take a look at is this idea, this premise that there is a need for strategic flexibility. And as we go through these things, we're going to take a look at, ultimately, I want to take a look at 5 reasons why we might want to train for adaptability and not just one way to do things, right? I'll give you an example, right? More often than I can count, folks will post on my comments on my videos, right? That bullshit doesn't work or whatever their lead in is. And the assumption is everybody knows how to fight. You just need to put on gloves, get into a ring and figure it out and get really, really good at that. Okay. Well, that's a strategy, right? Well, it's also a training strategy, but we're going to set aside what gloves do to alter the training, right? And what they do to make us assume certain possibilities, certain options, and dismiss others, okay? So again, it's not that they're not important, and it's not that they're not safe, but if all you're going to do is just jump in and do caveman with some style, it's kind of like the Toy Story movies, right? Where Buzz didn't fly, he was falling with style, okay? So there's a difference between being a strategic problem solver and somebody that just goes and throws hands, okay? So again, it's not that they don't have a strategy, they have a strategy, right? But I'm not talking about fighting. I'm not talking about just one type of fight. We'll get to that here in a minute, right? But here's the thing. We've got folks with this idea about a way to do it. And it might not be them. It might be somebody who gets so engrossed in their particular martial art or martial system or the way their dojo does things that they only bother to train with or use certain types of punches, certain types of kicks, right? And they'll dismiss other systems or other fight styles, their kicks, their punches or whatever as and I actually heard instructors say this. Today we're going to defend against somebody who doesn't really know how to punch. Everybody knows how to punch. We're born instinctively with this kind of thing. Now, punching effectively, that's a whole different matter. But we have to be careful with this cognitive bias where ego assumes that whatever we do, whatever we've chosen is by default right because we wouldn't pick something that was wrong. Would we? Okay. So, but here's the thing, right? Have you ever been in or have you ever heard about or seen a situation where it's not a mutually agreed upon fight by two bulls fighting for dominance, right? High school fight, bar fight, whatever. Have you ever heard or been in or been the brunt of or whatever, right? Someone who was attacked from behind or otherwise blindsided somewhere in the fight. Could be at the beginning where the initial attacker does that thing. It could be you're doing your thing and everything's going okay. And then next thing you know, there's a shot out of nowhere because you didn't realize he had a friend in the fight, okay? How about a case where things started out normally and then the attacker pulled a weapon. They pulled a knife. They pulled a gun, something like that, right? Grabbed a baseball bat, whatever, okay? The list goes on and on, right? About these things, right? Where there's more than one attacker. There's the environment was off, right? Dude, I'd have won that fight, but like I tripped over a chair, or like I was between tables and I couldn't move easily. And yeah, what you're telling me is you didn't have options. You didn't have training or experience or tools in your toolbox to allow you to adapt to the way things were going on, right? Because all you ever did, not you, right? General statement, don't freak out. All the person ever did was put on gloves and get in the ring and figure it out, or just watch other people who fought the way they like fighting, or the way they think is the best, the trickiest, whatever. Okay. This cognitive bias thing is a bitch, right? It'll lead us down all kinds of trails. And then next thing you know, I don't know, we're living a life of quiet desperation, trying to figure out how the fuck we got here and how we're going to get out. Right. Anyway, so today we're going to take a look at, again, 5 scenarios where just one factor changes. We're going to change just one thing, which could, right, if we have the ability, and hopefully what these trainings are doing is giving you some foresight to work these things in so that you don't get caught with your proverbial pants down in the moment where you need another approach or another perspective or another strategy or another set of tools that you didn't load up with because, well, I never thought about that. Okay, well, I get it. Okay, we never think about something until it happens to us, which is why a teacher and or a training system should show you things that you never thought of before, or you might have thought of but dismissed because, well, nobody else is doing that. Maybe there's a reason for that, and there's 2 reasons that nobody else is doing it. Either one, it really doesn't work and everybody's tried it. But before we jump into that bandwagon, how about nobody else is doing it because everybody else is following along with the herd? Everybody else has been, it's mass hypnosis, right? This is the way it's done. This is the way everybody does it, right? Instead of looking at the way, what everybody does, see, everybody doesn't do it. The martial arts world shows you several different options, several different ways that things happen, that they're all different, right? So, but either way, the way everybody does it, right? And then backing off and developing defenses just in case you run into somebody that's their thing. Okay. Anyway, we'll take a look at these different scenarios, but let's do this first, right? I'm actually going to kind of go out of option. Speaking of martial arts, self-defense, disciplines, those kind of things, we're going to take a look at 4 strategic options, okay, that somebody might use in a fight, but that they also might gravitate to based on fight style, system, or whatever. Because here's the reality of things, right? And our mind science, that is just the way that was codified 1,600 years. It goes way back over 2,500 years old. So shit's been working for a while, right? If you know somebody's personality type and you know what they were really good at in school or what they majored in college or whatever, okay, you can make some pretty good educated guesses about what their vocation is, right? What jobs they gravitate to, what types of people they like to hang out with, what types of hobbies they like to have, right? And if they don't have those things, then there's a disconnect. Either they went to college for a subject that they were taught would make them a lot of money, or that's what our family does, or whatever. So there's where the disconnect happened, and it doesn't really fit them. They didn't figure that out until, you know, after graduation or whatever. I have a lawyer friend. He's actually a working lawyer, right? But he has his law degree, went to school to be a lawyer. And now he's a business manager because it didn't take more than 2 months outside of law school to realize that he didn't want to play that game. Okay, didn't want to do that thing. But he has a degree, so he helps his friends navigate the legal system. But he's not not a lawyer. Okay, so anyway, but my point here is that personality types and whatnot, and people's backgrounds and their build, right? Their physicality, their fitness level, all that kind of stuff, right? A personality, B personality will cause them to choose certain fight styles as well. Okay, so it's an interesting thing, right? And if we know these things, we can read somebody, right? We can be 80% in the ballpark, and then if they do something out of that realm, okay, it's just a slight adjustment, but we can know 80% of what they're going to do by understanding how they're coming at us, right? In one of our schools, in the Gyoko school, we had these happo, right? These 8 areas of study / skill development. One of them is called seishin. Seishin just means knowledge, understanding, that kind of thing, and it runs through all the other ones. But anyway, so just quickly, 4 options that somebody could have when they're trying to handle a situation, right? So the first one is they could hold their ground. Not moving, okay? Stand your ground, whatever people use as that phrase, right? I'm not running, okay? I'm not charging you either, but you're not getting past me, okay? So they can hold their ground, right? We'll come back and we'll run through a couple of just example fight systems just to kind of get our head wrapped around these things, right? So they could hold their ground, right? They could use defensive angling, and distance. Okay, what I mean by that is in the Army we used to call it we weren't allowed to say retreat, so we advanced to a rearward position, or we advanced to the most recent secure position, right? Because you're not allowed to say retreat, right? So that means back up, right? So what we're doing is we're creating more time for ourselves to both see what's happening, to see what we have, and to wind up and create more power to move in, right? This is a lot more adaptable and whatnot, but we're backing up, causing him to have to come more and to stretch him out, things like that, right? Another one, which is a big part of this upcoming program we're doing, right, is to use preemptive aggression. Aggressive aggression, right? We're going to hit him first, right? We're going to move in on him, right? Now, this is not just like running into the bear's cave, poking the nose and hoping you get out alive. This really requires a lot of discernment, a lot of assessment skills, and watching what's going on so that when the opportunity arises, you go. Could it be just taking the fight to him and just drilling the shit out of him all the way? It could be, okay? Chuck Liddell, one of the MMA UFC fighters, used to be really big at that. He used to go in for like a 1 or 2 shot knockout kind of thing. But that was his claim to fame. Okay. And not that he wasn't a big guy, not that he wasn't a tough fighter or whatever, but Chuck would move in on this. And if it didn't happen within the first 1 to 3 shots, his friggin' fights lasted a long time. Okay. As opposed to somebody who might be moving around and kind of managing distance and whatnot and biding their time. And then that opening happens, boom, and it's done. Okay, that kind of thing. Another one, right, is using tricky evasion, right, chaotic movement, right. We're just not standing in one place. Okay, we're moving around. Now, do a lot of fight styles have this? Well, yeah, boxing does that. And, okay, I get it, right, because ultimately all of these things have their place in just about every fight style. But if we shift into style mode, right, we can recognize that holding their ground, right? I'm going to hold it. I'm going to use leverage. I'm going to grab this guy. It's about manhandling, right? It's about using leverage to pin this guy down, to crush him in place, whatever, right? So we got wrestling, we got sumo, which is another type of wrestling, but not the same, right? We have like the big guy just grabs the person by the clothing or by the throat, or by the face, pow, 1 shot, right? It's just, they're not moving, right? And it's really difficult to move them, okay? Just because of space, nature, whatever, right? A police officer or a security professional, right? Regardless of what's going on the inside, right? Holding the ground because it's an authority position, okay? Sir, calm down, okay? So it's a strategic tactic to manage the situation, right? Over here, what we got is we've got this wind up kind of thing where this person might be like smacking things to make them stay away, right? Creating some distance. And then when they come in, right, in our art, punch comes in and we're shifting out, blasting that away, and then throwing the body weight behind the strike to go and get it. Another strategy here is in sensing their movements, right, and going with the flow, right? So judo, certain types of jujitsu, those kind of things, right? Preemptive aggression, we get that. Boxing, karate, taekwondo, we know what that looks like, right? Tricky evasion, aikido, other types of tricky, evasive kind of thing, right? So again, there are options for use, but what tends to happen if you read the op-ed sections of like Black Belt magazine, or these, they used to be called forums, now what they call it, like Facebook, in Facebook groups and threads in certain things like on Quora and shit like that, right? What you end up seeing is this style argument, right? If a judo guy fought a karate guy, who would win? Right? Well, what it really comes down to is who understands how to use their stuff a little bit better. But have either of those people, the guy who's going to win is the person who's actually trained with that consideration in mind. Because on the surface, if the karate guy or the boxer can keep the judo guy from moving inside their strike and kick range, right? The judo guy has a really, really good chance. I'm sorry, the karate guy has a really good chance of winning because he's just keeping this guy out of grabbing range, right? But if the judo guy can get inside that range, see, things change, okay? Things change, right? Anyway, so again, we're just flying through this stuff, right? Of course, there is a fifth element, right? There's a fifth element, not like the movie. There was a Bruce Willis movie a bunch of years ago, I think, called The Fifth Element, right? We'll talk about this in a minute. But again, our focus is on answering the question, how does having different strategic options allow for handling situations, a wide range of situations, more easily and successfully, okay? So, but to do that, let's jump over here and take a look at what I mean by strategy and style, okay? Everybody has style, right? Okay, kick his ass with style, right? Which is why you opt for a martial art instead of a thug thing, because there's more grace, there's more style, there's more, you know, whatever. Anyway, okay, so here's what I mean, okay? Let's start with style, right? No, let's start with strategy. That's all right, strategies, okay? So strategies, what I'm talking about here, right, are strategies are outcomes, okay? And this is not simplistic, like, I'm just gonna kick his ass. My outcome is to win. Duh, okay? Except in ninjutsu, at the mastery levels, right? The lesson is you don't have to win. Just don't lose. Which really bakes most people's brains, especially if they're stuck in that dichotomy, that dualistic thinking of winning and losing. Well, if you didn't win, then you lost. If you didn't lose, then you won, okay? No. If I can de-escalate this situation and we both go home without a shot being fired or a punch being thrown, okay, you can go home thinking, well, I won that because I talked him out of it. Okay, but you know, he won too because he didn't get his ass handed to him, or he didn't go to jail for killing you or whatever. Okay, so it's not the same thing, right? So outcomes, but there's a mix in there, right? And so what I'm talking about with strategies, right, are options. Right? I have options. I can hold my ground, or if the situation dictates, I can back off and create some space before I, you know, to stretch this guy out or whatever, based on him. And again, we'll talk about those here in a minute, right? I could move in there and get it, right? I could use tricky evasion, find an opening, catch him that way, right? So this is the more of these I have, the more situations I can handle, okay? Because legally, which is a factor of self-defense that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to, okay? While everybody's focusing on staying out of the ER or the morgue, they don't think about not getting ass raped by a couple of guys in the prison shower, okay? So that's a whole different self-defense situation, right? So anyway, outcomes and options, right? Style, right? What's style, okay? Style is a set way of doing something, right? There's a framework and we stick to that thing, okay? I call style being a one-trick pony. Okay? One-trick pony. That's all you got. That's what the guys tell me when they say all you have to do is fill in the blank. Really? Because to me, all I have to do is have as many friggin' options that I'm good at, and I have to have assessment skills, and I have to know how to be able to read the person, the situation, my potential liability, those kind of things, and be able to come up with a solution very, very quickly. I have to be a problem solver. Okay? So that way, when whichever one of these things I choose, I've got tools in my toolbox that I can approach it from there. Okay. Anyway, so it's a one-trick pony. It forces from my perspective, right? You can argue whatever you want, right? But I think it forces a do or die approach. And what that means is this is the way I always do it, and I hope to Christ it works. I hope to God it works today. Okay. And a lot of these people that say this is the way fights happen, everybody knows that. Or here's another way it comes at me, right? I can't ever think of a time where I grabbed somebody or grabbed somebody's wrist, or they grabbed me or grabbed my wrist, or they did this or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Like it never happens to anybody. Meanwhile, how many times did that happen today out of all the frickin' assaults that have occurred across the globe, right? I'm a workplace violence consultant in an alter ego, in another guise, right? Put on a different superhero costume, right? And a bunch of years ago, I was representing, I worked for a law firm in Texas that was representing a nurse who had been assaulted on the job, right? And she tried escaping, right? She was 4'8", something like that, not very tall, right? Short girl, right? And this person that came in looking for drugs went off the rails, and he was really tall, thin, 6'5", give or take, right? Beanpole, but long reach, okay? And she tried running. He caught up to her really, really quickly. He grabbed a hold of her wrist, and she tried to get away. Between his yanking back and her panic response trying to get away, detached not only her shoulder, but all the muscles all the way down her torso. She's maimed for life, okay? So these trolls and wingnuts can tell me that this shit doesn't happen, but just because it hasn't happened in their world, to me, they just got lucky, right? They've gotten lucky that all the fights have happened the way they fight, okay? But we're not talking about fighting, right? If you read the notes that I put out or the little billboard graphic I made, right? The word is survivability, okay? The word is survivability, right? Everybody talks about self-defense, and you see me writing the term self-defense, but I write the word self-defense because the search engine algorithms, most people type in the phrase self-defense. So I use that so Google matches up your search with my stuff. Not many people type in, how do I increase my survivability? But we're talking about survival. How do you survive more types of situations? That's what Ninjutsu is all about, okay? Speaking of which, okay? Anyway, but this one-trick pony kind of thing, again, it forces a do-or-die situation. Do you know the hammer analogy? Okay, the hammer analogy is if all you have is a hammer, then every problem is seen as a nail. Or every problem better be a nail. Or every problem is going to be treated like a nail. Which means you're going to break a bunch of shit or you're going to get in trouble, okay? You know? What are you doing? Oh, I'm fixing this cracked window. Do you need something other than a hammer? Well, I might need a hammer putting the frame back together or whatever. But this approach where I always fight the same way every time is like having the only tool in my toolbox is a hammer. And no matter what breaks, leaky faucet, toilet, whatever, it's hammer time. Okay, if that doesn't work, well, shit, maybe I have a backup. We'll call that duct tape. Okay, so it's the hammer nail, right? Analogy. Okay? So having strategic options is having a toolbox full of having a variety of tools. Okay, I need a Phillips head screwdriver. What size? Because the size of the blade, if it's too big, then it's going to be too thick to go into to fix the screw in my eyeglasses. But if that's the only screwdriver I have, and I've got to crank a screw into a cabinet that I'm building, well, that's not going to work either because it'll just spin in there because it fits in the space, right? So that's why we get tool sets that have different size sockets. We have different size screwdrivers. We might even have different types of hammers, whatever. because it gives us options. Okay, because what we're planning for are problems that could be in any realm, and I don't know what I have to fix. I don't know what I have to solve. Okay, so anyway, so there's that, right? So this flexibility thing, right, is one of the reasons behind the development of MMA. And you've been thinking this whole time, well, that's what MMA is for. Okay, I agree, right? MMA, mixed martial arts, for anybody who's been living under a rock. Okay. However, my contention has always been that ninjutsu is the original MMA. Now, I appreciate guys recognizing that there were holes in every fight style, right? Okay, I'm punching and kicking, but I get inside a certain range, and punching and kicking becomes harder and harder. And now we're not throwing hands, it's hands on, right? So how do I lock joints? How do I manhandle this person in one way or another, right? Or whatever, right? I might end up on the ground. So how do I do it from there, right? But what ends up happening, and this is the way it started, people were running around to different fight styles and learning them, trying to use one to spackle the gaps in the other one. The problem with this, okay, is that the principles and concepts for each of the styles might be in conflict with each other. So if I'm learning judo throws, aikido, locks and holds and things like that, that's more of a softer style. But if I'm learning like taekwondo, karate, even boxing, whatever, that's considered to be more of a hard style, slamming, right? There aren't any unifying principles. And so the person has to be really intuitive or stick with it long enough and hope they don't get killed in the process. What I mean by that is in the middle of your training, before you have all your skills, some jackwagon, crashes through your house, jumps out, and shoots you in the face. Whatever. I'm a big fan of shooting in the face. That's an analogy. Anyway, so it's about the unifying principles, right? So ninjutsu is the original mixed martial art, right? It always has been. But some people just feel the need to reinvent the wheel, right? Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do was a really good attempt at approaching this thing. And it's not that these things don't work, right? They do work. They work really, really well. But if you understand Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, right, then you can see the Wing Chun foundation underlying everything as he integrated other things. But he was a really intuitive guy, right? Same thing with MMA fighters. You can see what their base is and then how they added things on if you know what you're looking at. Okay, but again, some people feel the need to reinvent the wheel. Also, this misunderstanding that ninjutsu is not a style, it's a collection of principles and concepts that have approaches, right? But Sensei, we've got these 9 schools, and aren't they styles? No, because if just take Gyoko Ryu, right? Gyoko Ryu or Koto, either way, because they're complementing things. They were both organized by the same person out of the same body of knowledge, so they look like opposites, okay? But they're not just opposites on the big level, they're also opposites going up through the scrolls, okay? Koto Ryu, right? Koto Ryu base level, long range defensive angling coming back in. But the Chuden level techniques are very close range, okay? Gyoko's almost the opposite, okay? Where one lineage runs out, the other one picks up, and vice versa, right? So it's not that cut and dry. Ego would like it to be that cut and dry, but it's not, okay? So again, this misunderstanding that causes students to break the art or the system in their attempt to fix something they don't know isn't broken, okay? What I mean by that is, we don't do this thing. We don't do ground fighting in ninjutsu, so I'm going to go and study Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Takagi Yoshin and Shinden Fudo, you absolutely have those things. Yeah, but those kata don't look like the way fights start. Stop looking at the start. Look at how you can control them, because there's a huge difference between pinning somebody in a sport match where you can do whatever you want. As long as he can't move, you're all good. And what I tend to see is people lock the other person up where it's just as hard for them to get out of that spot as it is for the person they're locking. the other person's in a submissive position, their joints being broken or whatever, but the winner is wrapped around and locked. If somebody came rushing across that ring to stab them or kick them in the skull or whatever, they couldn't untie themselves from the subdued opponent fast enough to not let that happen. But in Tagagi Yoshin and Shinden Fudo Ryu, the locks and holds are always done in a way where you can get out in one move, because it's based on a battlefield or a back alley, not a contest. If it's only a one-on-one contest, you can come up with some pretty jacked beliefs about how fights happen. But if you're looking at warfare, if you're looking at back alley muggings, you're looking at survival situations, those ideas develop holes like a colander or a strainer, right? They suddenly don't hold water anymore, okay? So anyway, regardless of the route you take, right, it doesn't really matter, right? Let's take a look at 5 reasons where you may need to come at a problem or change your approach dealing with an attacker at least once, right? One attacker, multiple attackers, at least once during a real world attack, okay? And we're only going to look at one factor, okay? So the idea here with Whiteboard Wednesday is to give you things to think about, to integrate into your training, because my premise is the more you know about combat, the more you know about different attacker types, right? We go around this mandala, right? We go around, we're just going to pick this part right here. Each of these are different realms, but there's a lot of different ways to look at this. When we introduce students to training, we look at 4 different response modes. Ultimately, we want to get to here where we can shift gears, but 4 different response modes based on one of these things we're going to talk about. But these are also ways of classifying different attacker types, different attack scenarios, right? Different control factors, all kinds of things, right? So I get it. There's a lot of people that, Hatsumi Sensei said you don't have to do that, right? That's bullshit. Hatsumi Sensei never said it was bullshit, right? But people have gone to him, Sensei, we really don't have to learn that stuff to learn ninjutsu, do we? And Sensei would say, no. Okay. And either after that person left or maybe while they were still there, he'd turn to look at one of us and go, you don't have to breathe either, but we highly recommend it. Okay. So the more you know, the greater chance, or the more you know about different types of situations, and the more you know about handling those individual types of situations, the greater your chances of success. Okay. It's about options. Okay. And there's this old analogy, and it was a different teacher outside of this martial art that covered this stuff, right? And it was based on people saying they didn't have any choice, right? How'd you lose that one? Well, I didn't have a choice, man. I had to do what I did. Well, now you're going to jail because you slammed the guy, fell over, cracked his skull on the curb, and he's dead. Involuntary manslaughter. Nice talking to you. See you, bye. Okay. Well, I didn't mean for that to happen. I know, but you didn't have other options to use, and if you did, you didn't use them. Okay. So, but when people talk about not having a choice or not having options or whatever, okay, this directly affects or reflects on the survivability factor or quotient that you have in a survival situation. Okay. And if we just go by the numbers, right? I didn't have any choice. I didn't have a choice. Okay. Bullshit. Only dead people have no choice. If you have 0 choices, you're dead. Okay. What most people mean when they say they didn't have a choice is they only had one, because it's the way they always do it. Their habit patterns are so entrenched, their preferences are so holy that they can't be, right? Or they're so stuck in their ways, I'm not moving. This is the way I do it. Kiss my ass. Okay? Well, if you only have one option, then you're a slave. And I know that's a bad word today, but it doesn't matter if somebody else enslaved you or you enslaved you. Okay? Don't let the worst enemy you have be the space between your ears. Okay? If you have one option, if you only have 2 options, right, you have a dilemma. But people that have a dilemma, there are 2 options, but they don't know which one to pick. Why don't they know which one to pick? Well, because they both seem equally good or equally bad. Well, then if you don't know, pick one. Well, I can't do that. I know. People can't pick one or won't pick one because they're afraid of being wrong. So it's not about the dilemma, it's about the fear of looking bad or being wrong. Warriors don't have that concern. Okay? I pick one. As soon as I choose it and move in that direction, I will immediately know what to do next. I will immediately know what the priorities are, or I will immediately know that that was a bad choice, in which case I make another choice. Well, but there isn't another choice. Sure, there is. It's either stick with this until I figure it out, or go and do the other thing. Right? Well, yeah, I just wasted time. No, you didn't. You spent your time figuring out that that was stupid. There's no wasted time. I don't care what anybody else in our past lives taught us. If they're not highly successful at the thing we're trying to be highly successful at, we shouldn't listen to them. We should listen to people that are highly successful in the direction that we want to go. But most of us keep taking frickin' advice from people that aren't successful. They just have opinions. And those opinions make us feel comfortable. Warriors aren't supposed to be comfortable. Right? Anyway, it's only until you have 3 or more options in any given situation are you approaching freedom. 3 or more. That number shows up in the scrolls of multiple lineages over and over and over again. Okay? So I'm going to give you 5. Right? And one of them we're going to break out. Okay? So regardless of the route you take, right? So let's take a look at these reasons, right? Again, just one factor might cause me to choose any one of these things, or the factor changes. Any one of these things could change mid-encounter, mid-scenario, okay? So the first one, this is where I tend to start students, because the biggest thing I think is missing in most martial arts training, because again, people gravitate toward arts that already fit their nature. So if they're aggressive, they go to aggressive ones. If they're passive, they move to things that are more passive. If the goal is restraint, or those kind of things, right? But the first one is my emotional state. If my emotional state, if this person is scaring the shit out of me and my body's already doing this, okay? That's why we give people tools for that. So when they realize they're doing this and their body's starting to cover, oh, I know what to do, because I already have options built in that work off of that energy. Great. But if this person's doing something where they're about to move and I feel this need to move in, into, we've got options for that. So we haven't learned one style, but the emotional state is conflicting. It's kind of like somebody in a karate class. I remember when my first attempt at this, getting into a karate class, at that point in my life, I was a very different person. Okay, I was in middle school. It's called junior high school then, because we had cooler names for things. Anyway, I was not an aggressive kid, but I opted to get into karate because I was hoping it would make me that. Right? And so we get into sparring, and I'm trying to stay out of his reach, and I'm avoiding things and whatnot. And the teacher and the seniors kept yelling, "Get in there, get him, stop backing up." Meanwhile, my whole system was like, everything about me was in evasion or avoidance or escape mode and all that kind of stuff, right? Meanwhile, I'm being taught, well, you're in an art where you need to go get him. I'm not in go get him mode. And the more my brain tried to get my body to do that, the more my body tightened up and the more shots I took, because there's a mismatch. Okay? One of the first things that we learn in Ninjutsu is the integration of the body and the mind and the emotional state and whatnot, because if those things are out of sync, you're not this thing called integration, or this thing called integrity, right? Where everything is lined up, moving in the same direction, right? It's not happening, right? So the thoughts are one way, but then most human beings live this way anyway. They have certain thoughts about things or people or whatever, but they say something different. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do this, right? Or those people suck over there. Meanwhile, I'm being an asshole too, right? And then they act a different way from both of those. So there's no integrity within themselves, but they get pissed off when somebody lies to them, cheats them, or doesn't have integrity. Interesting. Anyway, so one reason that I might choose a certain option, any one of these, right, is my emotional state. This is where I start students, okay? Another one might be, excuse me, my objective, okay? Am I trying to de-escalate this thing? Am I trying to just get away? Or do I need to shut this person down? Because if I don't, the reason I stepped in was because he was trying to kill that person over there, right? That either I'm responsible for protecting or it was a stranger and whatever, okay? So what's my objective, right? When I was a police officer many moons ago, right, my objective was to get this guy on his face or chest, on the ground, across the hood of a car, trunk of a car, whatever. What do you call those things? Boot, whatever, for my guys in the UK. Was to get him into that position, right? So how do I need to approach? Okay. Now, again, only one factor. There could be multiple factors going on, right? I'm just going to keep this nice and clean, right? Another factor could be I choose a certain strategic option or approach based on his fight style. His fight style. Can I match my kamae? Can I match my my style of uke nagash? Or the option for uke nagash? Can I match my techniques to his fight style? Because the ones I'm choosing take advantage of the weaknesses in his fight style. Or am I just doing my stuff because this is my style and that's his style, and we're going to see what happens? Okay. Well, I hope your family, your wife and kids, or whoever, are okay with whatever happens, like playing the lottery. Well, you know, honey, win or lose. If you win, we'll see you at home. If you don't, we'll miss you, right? Kids will be calling Bob Dad next week, whatever, right? So based on his fight style, right? Another one is based on his emotional state. You ever seen somebody who's done a lot of work developing a fight style and they got absolutely fucking enraged to the point where they just, there was nothing from what they learned before, right? They just dove on somebody or whatever. It was nothing like they had spent years training it, because they were overwhelmed by an emotional state, or they were scared shitless by somebody coming in or whatever. And as they're trying to do their thing, they take this shot and the spirit just leaves them and they're just cowering. They're in flee mode or whatever. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I just sent out an email, I think it was yesterday, that had some student stories in them from students who used this stuff, and specifically this fire mode, this preemptive aggression kind of thing. And one of them that I talked about was this mom who trained with me. Her name was Sharon, and she lived out on one of these rural roads, one of these country roads, out away from everybody. And she was just coming home from a friend's house. Nice day's walk to a friend's house, spent some time, had some tea, whatever. Walking home, this guy on a bicycle rode by her, and next thing you know, she hears the bike hit the ground. Well, her first assumption is, shit, this guy crashed. She doesn't even get turned around to see what happened, and this guy is wrapped around her from behind, knocks her to the ground, is dragging her behind these bushes, right? And she goes into not today mode, right? Kicking, punching, grabbed his freaking skull and screamed into his ear like it was a megaphone. Next thing you know, this guy who was in preemptive aggressive mode is running down the freaking road like he shit his diaper, and he's running home for mommy. Okay. So things can flip. Okay. So emotional state can change everything, right? So, but we definitely have to adapt to his, because we might normally, I'm an A personality type, right? My primary, when problems arise, after an assessment, is typically to take action. But I've learned to do an assessment quickly, right? Even if it's just feeling the pressure that's going on and then adapting to that thing, okay? So anyway, all right. Number 5, right? It could be based on external conditions. Okay, it can be based on external conditions. What might those external conditions be, Sensei? Well, could be the environment. Could be the environment, right? Could be your surroundings, right? Am I in a restaurant with tables all over the place, chairs that move? Am I in a place where there's people milling around and they didn't make a hole yet, right? And there's bodies that we're bouncing off of. In Japan, on a regular basis, right? Certain times a year, everybody likes to show up because the weather's nice. Okay? They don't like to be there when it's too hot or too cold. It's uncomfortable. The Buddhist priests that I go visit in the Japanese temples would answer that statement with, "You too hot? Too cold? You uncomfortable? What are you going to do when you go to hell?" Right? I'm not going to hell. I'm going to heaven. Okay, well, I hope so. Anyway, but the point is that the dojo is just fucking packed with people, right? And Hatsumi Sensei always made a point to point out that, look, this is going to be like a mano-a-mano kind of thing, but not just a one-on-one. You're boxed in. You're in a finite space with bodies bumping into you and all kinds of stuff. You have to figure out your technique and how to do what you need to do there, okay? And if you know how to sort out those 9 schools, okay, Takagi Yoshin-ryu, I'm taking that. Either that or Shinden Fudo-ryu, because Takagi Yoshin-ryu is designed to corkscrew this guy down to my feet. If I try to throw him and he bumps into another person and that puts him back on balance, shit, the fight keeps going. Okay? Or in the middle of the throw or the middle of the strike or whatever, somebody bumps into me and I miss, and then he gets the advantage. I need to be able to adapt around here and not just, I'm doing my favorite technique. I'm trying to do what Sensei showed. Well, in the moment, you better adapt away from that because the conditions are not allowing for that to happen. Everybody moved away and made a space for Sensei to demonstrate. Guess what you don't have at the moment? That space. Okay? So could be the environment. Could be the shoes I'm wearing. They're great for tread and traction on the ground surface I'm on. It's kind of like Converse basketball sneakers on a basketball court. Stick like octopus suction cups kind of thing, right? Yeah. Try to do a Taekwondo pivoting kick. We have to pivot on that foot, see if your ankle doesn't unscrew. Okay? So the ability to match that kind of stuff up, right? Environment, which can also include your clothing, all that, right? Okay. Another factor for external conditions could be rules. Okay. Could be laws, could be rules that you have in your vocation, right? For police officers, there's a use of force doctrine. There's certain things for corrections officers in certain facilities. I know a couple of corrections officers where they're not allowed to start taking defensive action until the person is within 15 inches. People's fucking arms are longer than that. So whoever made up that rule has never worked that job. Okay? And the fact that at normal fight distance, it takes less than a quarter of a second for this to start and hit a target. What's it take at a third of that distance? Right? Just the stupidity, right? Workplace policies that could be in place, all kinds of things, right? So there's all these rules. Not counting, and again, these are external considerations, but the external conditions could have been our training, and we were taught when X happens, do Y. So we're waiting for X to happen, but it doesn't, or it doesn't happen the way it always happens in the dojo. So we missed our opportunity to do Y. Okay? And then we get our asses beat, and the first question we ask is why? Why did that happen? No, different why. Anyway, right? And then the third one is situational. But Sensei isn't environment and rules situational. Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. Okay. What I'm talking about is in the moment. In that moment, we might have considerations that we wouldn't have in another moment. I don't care if we're in the workplace. I don't care if we're a cop. I don't care, right? So here are a couple, right? Defending myself while my kids or others are right there next to me. How do I maneuver? Okay? If there's multiple attackers and I go charging in, guess what I just did to my wife and kids? I left them behind. Okay? Or if I decide I'm going to back out and I knock my kid over, now I'm tripping over them, I fall on them, I get my skull kicked in, my kid, you get the idea, right? Or I'm doing this evasive kind of thing and I'm just waiting for this guy to stab me with a knife so I can do my cool technique, right? And I forgot that my wife is clinging to me or cowering behind me. And so I avoid and she gets stabbed in the gut. Okay. How about the need for escape? Okay. So I don't have the time, the wherewithal, whatever. And suddenly this is not going well and I need to get out. Okay. Did I pay attention to where the exits are? Do I know where I am in the room? All that kind of stuff, right? Okay. How about rescuing a friend or rescuing somebody else? Can I insert myself into a situation where somebody else is being attacked, redirect that person's attention so it's on me, so my friend or that other person has a chance to get out, and then I can go into de-escalation, dissuasion, deliver techniques, whatever. Okay. So this requires more than just a one-trick pony kind of approach. And I don't care if this one-trick pony thing is style or it's my favorite technique. Favorite technique is still a one-trick pony. Right? I had somebody tell me one time, a long time ago, that if they don't start, and this is in this art, but if they don't start their defense a specific way, something went wrong or they moved wrong, they didn't start with this specific one or two moves, they were lost and didn't know what to do after that. And somebody else, he was a police officer actually, really serious about trying to learn this stuff. He's learned other things or whatever. He could not get out of this headspace. And no matter how much help I tried to give him, I know the right answer. So I don't know why he asked me a question, but either way, he couldn't get out of this headspace. So his experience was always, every time I try to do my techniques, which my assumption is based on models for the beginner, not adaptive. Every time I try to do that, after the first punch, the whole fight goes to chaos and I can't do anything else. Sounds to me like it's not the art or the techniques or whatever, but the training model you're using to get those skills in so that you can feel your way and make sense out of the chaos, which is another thing that I call this, right? Strategic approach, choosing a strategy is not just your plan for resolving it, but it allows you, it gives you a certain perspective to make choices about techniques, tactics, those kind of things. And it helps you make sense out of the chaos. Okay? Because if I'm moving in, I need to be looking for very different things than if I'm backing away and he has to come to me. It's very different, right? But ego wants a quick 0 or 1. It's either working or it isn't kind of thing, and there's too many variables. Anyway, if you're normally with us and whatnot, there's the URL down there. This Friday's class, we're going to take a look at a couple of these factors, right? What we're going to have to do is we're going to play with some role-playing kind of scenario-based kind of things. So the techniques will change, but what's going to happen is we're going to change. We're going to start, from like an emotional response kind of thing, okay? And then we're going to flip it to, I need him in a certain position, right? So it's like billiards, right? It's like pool. I'm going to call my shots, okay? We're going to have our partner change the way they punch or the way they kick or whatever, and then we're going to have to adjust to that. We're going to have our partner, energy-wise, be one place or another, so we can see how that would happen. I may throw some environmental things in there. I'm not sure just yet, but you know, the week's still young. Okay, so you can go over there, get signed up for the class. It's still $4.99 US to do a 75 to 90-minute class. Even if you can't make it, you get the recording, right? Remember though, with all of the stuff, all of our services, the prices have gone up, and we've added so much stuff since COVID to the value of everything. It's time, right? We're undervaluing the cost of training at this point because it's just, you know, I got to pay the rent. So anyway, beginning June 1st, right? Prices are going up. Some are going up 50%, some are going up 100%. So get in while you can if you know, if you're up for that kind of thing. Also on that page, you scroll to the bottom, there's actually a link to go to the page to take a look at our Ninpo Masterclass program, where you would get 2 of these classes per week. So what's that, 8, 9 classes a month, right? For a whole lot cheaper. Plus there's a $1,300 bonus training package attached to that. Take a look at that if you want. Otherwise, if you've always wanted to take Ninjutsu and you don't know where to get started, you're looking for an online training program, take a look at our Module 1, Foundations of Ninja Self-Defense program over there. I'll put a link in the description down there. But if you go to Foundations dash, there's just a hyphen or a dash between each of these, right? Foundations of Ninja Self-Defense dash M1, right? At onlineninjaacademy.com. There might be a link on the main page. I'm not sure at the moment, right? But if you go over there, but there's the Ninpo Masterclass for those who are farther down the line. This is a good foundation thing to get started. Otherwise, there's this, right? And hopefully this has served you. I know that I've given you enough to take your training much, much farther down the line, but you have to see the value. So leave a comment about an aha moment or something that really stood out to you or whatever. Flaming comments, right? If it's not purposeful to do anything more than make you look big or me look small or whatever, right? After I have a good chuckle, I'll just turn it off, right? So, but I appreciate you telling, just doing whatever activity you're doing, like, subscribe, that's for the folks that like it, right? For those who don't, I appreciate that you are leaving a comment or hitting dislike or whatever, because you're still telling the algorithm, which is a stupid computer, right, that people are engaging with this stuff, so it must be good, okay? And then they'll show it to more people, and a good percentage of those more people will like it. This is the ninja way, right? So you can love me, hate me, whatever. If you're on the fence, most of you guys already know by now. If you're on the fence, give me a minute. I'm going to push, right? And then we'll find out, right? After that, we'll see you, all right? So we're on for next week, so I will see you next time on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday.